All right, guys, let's talk about the key factors in making a strong offer. We're gonna talk about price, financing, closing costs, down payment, and the term and length of the transaction. All right, guys, of course, price is very important. The amount of money you offer on a home is extremely important. The highest price doesn't always get the home. So keep in mind that there's other factors that you need to have strong in order to help justify your offer in a seller's eyes. Brings us next to financing. I'm gonna give you the strongest financing to the weakest financing in a seller's eyes. The strongest, of course, is cash. Cash, they say cash is king. It does help a lot, but keep in mind, it's all cash to the seller at the end or close of the transaction. Next is conventional financing. Now, the more money you put down on a conventional financing, the stronger that financing is gonna be in the seller's eyes. If you do 3% down conventional financing, it's not as strong as a 10 or 20% down conventional financing. The next we have FHA. There's a couple different types of FHA as well. So you have a down payment assistance FHA, and that is the weaker type of FHA financing where they help you with your down payment or help you with some of your closing costs. Regular FHA financing is typically 3.5% down. And again, this is weaker financing than your conventional financing. Next, under the FHA financing is VA financing. VA financing is for our veterans, and God bless them for their service to our country. They get 100% financing with very, very low rates to purchase a home. Now, it is less desirable financing than FHA financing is to a seller. And then you go further down, which is seller carry or seller financing, which is very rare, typically undesirable for a seller to want to finance your purchase of their home. The next thing is closing cost. A seller has their own closing cost, a buyer has their own closing cost. In some situations, the buyer needs the seller to help contribute towards their closing costs so they can get the deal closed. If a buyer is asking the seller to pay their closing costs, that does make the offer weaker. Let's say you made a high price offer on a home. Let's say it was $10,000 over the original asking price. Sounds like a pretty strong offer, right? Well, keep in mind, if you're asking for $10,000 in closing costs, realistically, that brings that offer $10,000 down. It also causes issues with potentially getting the appraisal in at value because now we're upping the price. It could be just fine, and keep in mind, that's a risk the seller might take on that appraisal. So in comparison, if someone's asking for no closing costs from the seller to pay, and the buyer's paying their own closing costs, that is a stronger offer than asking the seller for closing costs. That brings us to the final key factor, which is terms and conditions. A term is typically the length of time of the escrow before it closes. That could be 30 days, it could be 14, it could be 45, 60. It just depends on what works best between the buyer and the seller. Now, 30 days would be a strong offer typically. Instead, the seller has a certain situation that they have to work around. So they might want a longer escrow or a shorter escrow that could strengthen your offer. If you need to sell a property before you can buy another property, that's the sell of home contingency. That would make your offer weaker compared to an offer that didn't have the sell of home contingency, because the seller is risking accepting your offer when you still have to sell your home, get it in escrow, and get it to close escrow. There's so much risk in that time frame of you losing your own buyer or having issues with the sale of your home. So that's how you guys pay attention to the key factors of making a very, very strong offer, and we're gonna get you in escrow very soon.